We are back with another week of racing at Seward Park. This time we've got something a little bit different than the previous videos. You'll see a couple differences. One is we had a lot more Taco Time riders out this week. I think there was maybe 5 of us in the race overall and 3 of us that finished in the main group at the end. And the other is related to that. It's this rider right in front of me, 1052, is my twin brother who's just moved to Seattle and is joined the Taco Time racing team. And I will be racing for him today as it's his first week out here doing Seward Park. And he's got really great fitness. He's training for a marathon in October and he's just a generally super strong athlete. So going out this week, the plan was for me to ride for him. We'd also, you can see up near the front of the pack, a minute ago you could see him in the orange helmet is Jason, another Taco Time teammate out here. And we had talked about maybe trying to get one of the 3 of us into a break. If you've watched some of the Seward Park videos before or have raced at Seward Park before, you'll know that breakaways, especially early breaks, usually aren't super successful at Seward. But the idea was, hey, let's get a guy into a breakaway, maybe with a couple riders, and make some of those stronger riders in the field like Scott chase. Another thing that you'll notice this week is there's actually 2 Fount riders. Speaking of Scott, Scott's got a teammate out here. So of those 2 Fount riders in the dark green jerseys, I don't think either of them are on the screen here right now. But you'll see 2 of them. His teammate is Jerry, who I've raced with a couple of times before and who's also a really strong rider, has a really strong kind of minute to couple minute power. And so he's someone that, you know, we will be keeping an eye on throughout the race. So I'd given Soren a couple of pointers about Seward and how it races. He has just started racing Criteriums this year, but he's been racing out in Minnesota, which is more of a flat, traditional, close to a 4-corner crit course that he's been racing on weekly out there. And so I'd given him a couple pointers on who to look out for, where to be, you know, where you'd like to be. And as you'll see later in the video, a little spoiler, when the preems are going to come. So I just wanted to make sure that he wasn't going to get gapped off the back too hard through the corners and into this false flat section, because it can be absolutely brutal on this part of the course if you're having to chase back onto the back. You know, you can see you're going 19, 20 miles an hour, and I was not putting down a ton of power. Ooh, that was a little sketchy right there. But you're not putting down necessarily a ton of power unless you're having to chase back on, because the aero gain of being in the group at 20 miles an hour is pretty significant. So like I said, I was hoping to ride for Soren in this race. I actually did not do nearly as good of a job at supporting him as I could have, and you know, we just haven't raced together before. That'll be something that we get used to over time. But in particular, I was kind of sitting behind him because I wanted to make sure that, you know, he was holding a decent position, he was aware of who was in front of him and stuff, and I just wanted to be able to keep an eye on him for the first couple laps here. And he's doing fine. I mean, he's, you know, a little newer than I am to racing and crit racing in particular. But like I said, he's a super strong athlete, so he can definitely kind of brute force his way through some stuff. And as we will see going through this race, his capacity to make a really big effort and then recover very quickly from it is, I think, maybe his biggest weapon in cycling and athletics in general. Like I said, he's training for a marathon, so his you know, much longer aerobic capacity sort of endurance is super strong compared to mine and compared to, I think, a lot of guys out here on the crit scene.
Jason, your number is holding on a wing and a prayer right now, my guy.
So this is, you can't really hear it, but I was kind of fighting with my mate Jerry, the other Fount rider other than Scott, for this rider's wheel in front of me. And here he is coming around the outside now. Oh boy, Jason's number is really flopping around there. But like I said, Jerry's a super strong rider. I'm not sure, if he and Scott had any plans going into this. My guess, with the benefit of hindsight, is that they did, because as you'll see later in the race, they definitely had a little bit of a plan of attack. But going into the race, or at this point in the race, I was not sure if he was going to be riding for Scott or if they were, riding for each other or what.
Inside.
So an interesting thing happened here, which is I had talked to Soren.
If you want to go for it.
I'd talked to Soren prior to the race about the fact that the preems at Seward Park are generally at pretty consistent times. And so just there, he turned over his shoulder and said, when is the first of the two preems gonna be? And I told him it's gonna be in 1, maybe 2 laps. And then I said, if you want to go for the preem, you need to start moving up now. Now, what I meant by start moving up now is get up into, 3rd to 5th wheel, probably. Move up a couple of wheels from where we are, maybe be on Scott's wheel, a couple wheels in front of us, this Fount rider on the left in the dark green jersey. Jason's also moving up, but instead, Soren sends a flyer. It looks like he really is trying to hammer it off the front. Now, I had also warned him going into the race, this is not a really great place to attack on this false flat, because it feels like a good place to attack, feels like you can slingshot pretty well, but in reality, you've got the hill coming up, people are generally going to catch you, and like I said earlier, the aero benefit of being in a pack on that false flat is so huge. But Soren gets to the front, absolutely hammers it on the front with our buddy Jason, the other Taco Time rider in the orange helmet, on his wheel here, and is going for the preem. I almost never go for the preems at Seward Park. I certainly am not gonna this week. I generally try to save my matches for later, but I'm kind of watching Soren and thinking, oh no, dude, you gotta realize, don't be on the front right this second. And my estimation of 1, maybe 2 laps for the preem was exactly correct. It was 1 lap to the preem when I said that. But unfortunately now Soren is stuck in what I would call a very bad position. You do not want to be leading the race going into the preem lap or going into the final lap, generally, unless you're going to, make some kind of huge attack. If I found myself in this position, generally what I would try to do is probably let a rider or two come around me on this downhill and on this short flat section on the bottom of the downhill, so that I could draft on the false flat, conserve some energy for the hill and the sprint itself. Soren instead basically leads the field out for almost an entire lap here. This is where he went to the front, I think, a minute ago. So yeah, he's on the front for more than an entire lap. And I'm not 100% sure who ended up taking this preem. It looks like it might have been Scott. But in just a second as we hit this hill, you're going to see folks flying around Soren as I think he realizes, oh shit, I didn't get a gap, I'm not going to be able to hold this. And this is, you know, just, like I said, he's a little newer to racing. This is his first time racing at Seward Park. This is a super easy mistake to correct. And yeah, not sure who actually ended up taking that preem. It looked like there was a couple of guys off the front there. So not 100% sure who ended up getting that one, but then they did sit up, and so the field came back to him pretty quickly here. So unfortunately, Soren has burned a pretty substantial match there, but like I said earlier, one of his biggest strengths as an athlete is the ability to recover after those big efforts really well. So, you know, not super concerning. It actually looks like he's maybe chasing a bit on the front to try and bring these guys back who went for that preem. I don't know that that's super necessary, but totally get doing it. You know, just want to make sure that they don't try to get a breakaway going here and start working together. I was trying to tell him to slot in on this this ACT rider. This guy in the white jersey is riding for a cycling team, but it seems like maybe he didn't hear me or didn't understand what I was saying there. But I'm going to try to make up some positions here, not necessarily because I want to be pulling on the front of the group, but just because I want to be in a spot where I can see if attacks go on the next couple laps here. So I didn't realize until after the race, Soren let me know that he also tried to go for this second preem lap. I had not seen that. He is, I will say, a couple wheels up from me going into the lap, so he's definitely in that sort of fifth wheel sweet spot. That's a really solid spot to be at the beginning of a preem lap or the final lap. But I wasn't really aware at this point in the race that he was going for this preem lap. But I don't think it really mattered anyway. I think he put some energy in down here to make up a couple wheels. But then Scott sends this absolute flyer. And big props to this dude in the red helmet. He's super strong. He's out there every week. I haven't gotten a chance to talk to him. Don't know his name. But Soren decides, oh, I'm going to chase this guy down. And again is kind of towing the whole group behind him going into the hill here. So I'm kind of thinking, okay, maybe I can use him to launch me. I probably won't catch Scott, but I might be able to stick with some of these guys. But we ended up getting swarmed. Soren told me after the race also that he was having some gearing issues. You can kind of see right here, and you can hear it actually in the audio. Whenever he shifted into his smallest gear, so his biggest ring in the back, in the big chain ring in front, he would not be able to swap back under load, so he would have to basically wait until the top of the hill here and soft pedal for a second to actually be able to switch back, which sounds super frustrating, especially in a race like Seward where you're taking that whole climb in the big ring. But now he's taking it up on the front again, chasing down this group. Again, it's likely that they sit up, but they don't necessarily sit up every race on the second preem. Sometimes the group that goes for the second preem and sprints together just ends up staying away and taking it for the whole race. But they did not in this case. They will be brought back. It's not instantaneous, but they're going to be brought back shortly here. So something really interesting is happening on the front of the race here, which is, I had mentioned earlier that Fount had come into this race with a plan, or at least one sort of strategy that they could use, one card in their pocket, and they just used it, which was Scott was on the front of the race controlling, and Jerry went up in front of him, and Scott just let Jerry roll away off his wheel. Luckily for us, Soren was near the front as well and was able to make a huge effort to get up to Jerry's wheel. You can just barely see him there around the bend in front of us here. And so Soren was in that little move. And right around here, I want to say, Jerry kind of sits up and stops pushing super hard. Soren had thought after the race that the reason Jerry stopped pushing super hard was that he saw Soren was on his wheel and just didn't want to drag him to the finish line, which, fair. But I also talked with Jerry after the race, and he said that he had kind of botched that technical corner going into the last lap, had to sprint out of it, and it just felt like he was gassed. He burned his last matches here. But either way, it set up Soren super well. He's got this pretty substantial gap going into the last hill. But I also think Jerry sitting up had kind of hurt morale a little bit. And Soren does end up getting caught by this rider in the navy with the white helmet, who just kicked it up the hill here. But Soren ended up taking second, which is just amazing. Spectacular finish for his first race at Seward Park. I kind of right here am sprinting in to try and get in the top 6, but a couple riders came around me on the left side, and I ended up sitting up right around here, which I really shouldn't have done. I got to stop doing that week over week. But I was super pleased with how the race turned out for Soren. Huge congratulations on his first race at Seward Park, getting on the podium.